My name is Kevin McCaffrey. I'm the CEO of Trident, and welcome to this morning's, this afternoon's, or this evening's webinar, depending on where you are. If we just see, we're just on the top of the hour now, so we just see there's some more people just joining us. So we'll just give them another few seconds, and then we'll kick off with the webinar. So yeah, let's just give them a few seconds. Excellent. Okay, so as I said, my name is Kevin McCaffrey. I'm the CEO of Trident, and what I'm going to do first is just do a little bit of intro in terms of about myself and the panelists that are here with us today. So let me just do a quick screen share on that. Screen 2, share. So today's webinar, the title of it is, as you're aware, Digital Transformation Strategic Planning. And the content really for the next hour is to have a discussion with my other panelists, the 3 other panelists that we've got, on this particular topic. I should note that the webinar is recorded, and what we will do is, after the webinar, we will send through an email to everybody who's registered with a link to the recording that they can look at. And also, we would encourage anybody who does have questions to, there's a little Q&A button that you can add questions to, and we'd be delighted to answer them as we go through the hour. We want to keep this as a panel discussion. The intent is not to bore you to death with a bunch of PowerPoints, but to actually talk about our collective experiences in the area of digital transformation, and specifically in strategic planning areas. And as we talk about this, we'll also get the opinions from Janine, Joe, and Mike. So just a little bit about myself first. As I said, Kevin McCaffrey, CEO of Trident, and we're a software organization that provide tools to help organizations with strategic planning. We've been around for quite a few years, and we're active in the telco, the smart city space, and other verticals as well. So what I'd like to do is ask Janine, Joe, and Mike in turn to give a bit of background on themselves. And then we'll start getting into some of the questions we've already received from people. So, Janine, over to you if you want to tell us all about yourself and GDX.
Kevin, thank you very much, and good afternoon or morning or evening as it is over here in South Africa, everybody. So, Janine Rebelo, I'm co-founder and executive director of GDX, Global Digital Transformation. Founded the company about 2 years ago, and that was after spending a long time, too long to actually even mention, in the telco industry, but certainly a lot of experience with in large organizations, Vodafone being one of them, and largely in the product development, technical product development arena. So that's given me a really good overview, technically as well as commercially, and from a process perspective, on what it takes to bring about not only a product but a change into an organization, and looking at that from a strategic and in a commercial perspective. But I won't take up too much time. Kevin, who would you like to go next?
Let's go to Joe. Joe, tell us all about you.
Good afternoon, everybody. I'm in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. I'm Joe Jetter. I'm the business development partner at BusinessOne Consulting, Inc. We specialize in basically strategic change and product launch with Fortune 100 companies, mostly many of the large telecom service providers here in the U.S., and as well as other industries. And we'll talk about that a little bit later. I've worked in 40 countries around the world and been involved with basically change management or turnaround of a number of companies and processes, and also launching new products. Look forward to this conversation today.
Thanks, Joe. And finally, last but not least, Mike.
Last but probably least, I think, Kevin. So hi guys, my name is Mike Nevin. I'm the Managing Director of Alliance Best Practice Limited. I run a global community of individuals and organizations who are looking to use best practice, identify best practices to enable strategic collaborations. And of course, in any kind of digital transformation, it's almost inevitable that an organization or a provider of services will need to have some kind of alliance or collaboration relationship with additional services or additional software and capability. So my interest in this and in other areas of business is in how do you do that effectively? How do you collaborate for a common goal? So I'm delighted to take part in this webinar.
Excellent. Thanks, Mike. So I think one of the important things that when the four of us were looking at this was to look at the different aspects as part of digital transformation, and specifically from different angles. So, you know, as Mike explains, he's very much from the ecosystem partnering side, and Joe has great experience from a change management, and Janine probably more on the technical side, and me kind of on the tooling side. So we thought it would be kind of helpful to get these different perspectives. So really over the next kind of 45 minutes or so, well, half hour or so, and hopefully we get tons of questions from people out there. What we want to do is look at specific challenges that people are facing at the moment and how they're being dealt with. So one of I guess where I want to start is maybe with yourself, Janine. And one of the things that we encounter quite often is that organizations are looking at you know, their traditional business models are being challenged, and they could be challenged by the market. They could be challenged by, you know, up and coming startups or others. You know, so they have to look at that and have to look at a way of addressing that. So from your perspective, how would you see those organizations creating a strategy, or what are the steps that would need to look at in order to deal with that?
Thanks, Kevin. And I guess that's a great example of ladies first, hey? So, you know, you're quite right. It's such a dynamic and fluid environment. And what we found, you know, not only coming out of, you know, very structured corporate environment, but now pretty much on the other side, looking as a consultant in, is that people often ask, where do you start? You know, it's yes, I understand, you know, I often get asked, we understand that there's disruption. We understand that we can't use our legacy systems anymore. We understand that things can't be manual. But where on earth do we start? You know, what do you start changing first? And we always always go back to models and standards, and I love that, because generally they, you know, if widely adopted, they're proven. There's a good methodology behind them, and you can break that big question up into sizable chunks, you know. And there are, if you look at digital maturity model from TM Forum, those of you that might have had experience with that, is an example of that, where it divides an organization into areas, into dimensions. So what does your customer engagement look like? What needs to change there? There's sub-dimensions that can go into those areas as well. What's customer experience look like? What is that journey over the entire life cycle of delivering a service? And in these sort of disrupted times, and in this new era where it's on demand, the days of customer loyalty, I mean, I'm sure it's still there to a degree, but very much, you know, they'll be loyal as much as their experience is good. If your customers are having a bad experience and they feel that you don't know them, you don't understand them, there's no aggregated view, they phone for support, and all the services that they have are in different systems, and there's no centralized view, no 360 view of the customer, they're certainly going to be looking around them very quickly. And ultimately very easy in this day and age now to just go and subscribe on demand to another service. So it really is looking at from how you engage to your customer, with your customers, how you understand them, what information you have about them, how that translates into company strategy. What does your brand say? You know, the days of pure transaction, you pay, I give, is gone. It's how do you increase your customers' well-being? How do you really get into the world, and what are you giving back as much as what are you taking? So how do you position your brand leading edge but still in touch with your customers and their environments? And what about your technology? You know, so again, there's a number of dimensions in the technology section. Do you go completely virtualized, completely automated, or are there areas that still work manually, but you can slowly and gradually, incrementally introduce sort of an automated approach? The same goes really for operations. You know, do your processes still work for on-demand, smooth, and good customer experiences? And then on top of that, what a lot of telcos are experiencing is rising OpEx. And at the same time, what we're seeing is massive, massive price erosion. Year on year in most sort of mainstream legacy products, I want to call them, so Internet, Ethernet, MPLS, 23% year on year decline. So you've got to find a different way of refining your cost to serve and reducing cost to serve, because it's not going to be very long before your products become unprofitable. And that speaks to a lot of things around, you know, automation, virtualization, and streamlining processes, but that also feeds back into customer experience as well. And then last but not least, your people and culture. Collaboration is massive. And something that Mike said earlier, you know, that they partnerships. If we think about fourth industrial revolution, it's all about how do I collaborate with multiple teams from different areas of the business and or different companies and or different countries, right? So how do I have a central collaboration platform where everyone's got the same view? And how do I change the culture from the siloed, you know, I'll do this, I'll do whatever I need to in IT, and then I'll hand it over to networks and they'll do there. But how do you change from that into where you get expertise from different areas and you put them together in one team and everybody works together for a common goal? But that collaborative mindset has to change for the transformation to be successful.
Yeah, no, that's, I totally agree. And I do agree with the fact that there's a complexity in terms of the business with regards to the customer, with regards to the technology from an operational perspective as well. I think if we take a step back as well, and maybe Mike, from your thoughts on, you know, a definition of, you know, digital transformation probably isn't a bad starting point for us in some ways, thinking about, because it can mean a lot to different people. And some people think, you know, you just throw technology at it. It's just all about technology. But yeah, it's a bit more than that.
Yeah, I think from my perspective, you've got to remember, my company is a research and benchmarking company. So we talk to a lot of organizations, and when I talk to organizations about digital transformation, almost without exception, they're all panicking that everybody else is further ahead with digital transformation than they are. You know, it's like everybody thinks everybody else is doing it, but they are not. And it's fascinating to me when you talk to organizations, you say, okay, your CEO has established and your shareholders have agreed that digital transformation is crucial to the strategy of your business. And they say, yes, absolutely. Yeah. Right. Yeah. Right. Great. And I say, good. What does that mean? What exactly are you going to do? What projects, what program, you know, what does it look like? And I can tell you in the majority of cases where I speak to clients, They don't know. They really don't know. There is no common definition, and there's certainly no common structure to a process to achieve digital transformation. It's like everybody's saying it's a great thing, but nobody knows how to achieve it.
But is it not something that's almost relative to the organization? So we look at these times, these strange COVID-19 times, and you look at everything from the small, corner store or the corner shop that actually needs to go online to, a cafe that wants to sell stuff. And, that's an element, that is a form of digital transformation versus, large multinational companies like Siemens or Philips or Schneider who are doing massive transformational projects. It is relative to each other, but the concept from my point of view, and the key thing is obviously there's technology involved, because we're now looking at things from a digital. But I think the interesting thing is it's not just all about technology. And I think, Joe, from your point of view, quite often historically, you and I would have done large enterprise projects in the past where they've been very almost, a month or two before you go live, you think, oh, geez, yeah, we better think about the business. Or what do we do about customers? It's not about so how do you kind of get that balance between the technology and strategy and how does that happen? What happens there?
Concept and something that's been struggled with for as long as I've been involved with large enterprises. This the CIO wanting to be, or CTO wanting to be relevant with the business, or the business trying to get what they want from IT. And so what happens is in a digital transformation environment, it's now that the business and IT are integrated. There's an integration because the concepts that come through from the business, I need to be with this EBITDA driving this product to give us this kind of EBITDA, this kind of numbers, has to be an intimacy between IT that hasn't existed ever before. It's got to be more intimate, more connected, more in sync. So IT's running agile. Everybody's moving to agile as fast as they can. Well, the business, what is agile? So I find myself very much in a lot of cases educating the business on IT's running this way to drive initiatives. How do you get in sync with that particular way of thinking? And so what happens is this level of intimacy so that the business can drive and can control its outcomes and leverage IT as a tool requires a new level of intimacy. And if you can look at what's happening with COVID-19, everybody's plans had to change within the last quarter. There were a set of things that were going to be done in this calendar year. Well, some of the things aren't going to be done. One of my clients, everything has shifted to operational focus. Everything strategic. Oh, we were thinking about products 2-3 years out. Well, no more. Everything's about how do I deliver more for clients today? Everything else is off the table. That's a change that just happened this quarter. A very large multinational. Okay, this case, there's the need as never before for process and methodology to make sure that IT is intimate with the business. Or in a digital transformation environment, they get out of sync and then they're delivering something that has no relevance to what the business wants to do or how to accomplish that. And then you have a lot of projects that fall on the floor. So that's why the understanding vision, understanding strategy, understanding, okay, how do I not intersect so much, but really get intimate with IT in a digital transformation set of strategies.
Yeah, it's one of the things that I've noticed is some organizations and some people, when they're starting on the concept of digital transformation, they start with the how. They start thinking about, the solution without first of all thinking about what's the problem you're trying to solve. You see it in cities where they're trying to put up, sensors on top of light poles and, because they can and it looks cool. But what's the overall strategy around this? What are you trying to achieve? Who's involved? Why? It's also an important aspect in around, in order to go somewhere, you need to know where you're starting from. And Janine, you mentioned earlier the digital maturity model, which is something that's, you know, used quite a bit. It is used within the telco space. I know, you know, cities also have, there's a maturity level there, and that. So, you know, what's your view on that in terms of people being able to, and you mentioned as well about standards and leveraging those as a starting point. You know, you don't want to reinvent the wheel. If there's something out there that's done, you know, look for it and leverage that rather than trying to start from scratch. So yeah, just maybe chat a bit about how you've seen things such as the digital maturity model being used and the benefits of that. Thanks.
Yeah, thanks, Kevin. And I've actually, I think we were one of the first organizations when I was still in corporate that used it, and we've carried it through into GDX. And it's not that one size fits all necessarily, but it may not even be perfect, but it's a place to start, and it gives a view of the entire organization. So all of the dimensions that are meaningful to digital transformation and meaningful in producing any kind of operations and product and bringing in customers. So across the 5 dimensions that I spoke about, so customer, strategy, technology, operations, and people and culture. People and culture, by the way, are the most difficult one to change out of all of those. There's 28 sub-dimensions. So each of those categories are broken down, and across the 28 sub-dimensions, so it really gets nice and granular, right into the IT stack, right into how do you collect information around your customers, and is that federated through the organization? They're pretty hard-hitting questions. It's a survey that the whole company does on the 28 sub-dimensions. 5 areas of the business, and ultimately it gets even more granular in that it goes down into 119 criteria, and it's a self-assessment, which is actually really cool, because if it's a self-assessment and your organization is involved in assessing itself, and you've got 5 or 10 or 15% of your employees that are participating in that survey, then you've got 10% or 15% of your organization that starts to understand the different elements across the company that need to be looked at in terms of transformation. And there's 5 levels that you can choose from in that model. So either the company feels that it's really transformed and it's right at level 1, or it's right at the bottom. And what's pretty nice, if we come back to also where do I start, is some companies are actually a lot more transformed in some areas than they think they are. It sort of brings out those areas where they're strong already, and highlights the areas where there's a weakness in terms of percentage maturity. So you might then have a look at the end of that survey and say, well, I'm only 20% mature, but these are the areas, for example, in customer engagement that I need to improve on to take my level of maturity to 50%. So you start seeing where you're going to get the best return on your investments and which area of the business you need to concentrate on. So it's great from giving you visibility of where you should start and where you should concentrate, and it also is great in terms of it gives you an overall standard and methodology to work from. Otherwise, it becomes amorphous. You really don't know where you need to start.
Yeah, no, it is interesting, and I guess having looked at it, it's also can be quite, you look at it, and although it was designed for the telco sector, it is quite adaptable to any other sector, really, quite easily, I would have felt. I guess, maybe Mike or Joe, then, Janine talked about that whole aspect of culture and people, and that aspect of the impact that digital transformation has. And again, from a planning point of view, or from from an organizational perspective, you know, there's one thing just doing, somebody's added a comment, and thank you all for the comments and stuff that's coming in the chat. That's great. We'll be able to kind of start picking off some of those as we go through this. But, you know, I guess maybe Mike, from your point of view as well, is, you know, Janine was talking about the maturity model associated with that she'd been using on the telco side. But what about any kind of research you've been looking at as for organizations and how they're dealing with things from a partnering, and how the partnering or their ecosystem alliances need to evolve or change in order to meet their needs?
Yeah. So our research. So just to explain, Alliance Best Practice researches organizations and researches individual alliance relationships. So basically, we're able to advise clients on where they're at in what we would call an alliance or a collaboration maturity model. Now, if you accept, and it is a big if, and I'll invite, you know, Joe and Janine to comment on this, but if you accept that digital transformation is not something that you can achieve alone, and that's a discussion point. But if you accept that digital transformation is not something that you can achieve alone, then you have to work with other organizations to make it happen. And the first starting point of that is, are we as an organization, whether it's as an organization or as an advisory firm, are we at a sufficient level of maturity to be able to collaborate effectively with the other organizations to achieve that goal? Because if we're not minded to do that, I mean, we've all seen it. I mean, Joe will see it many, many times. I'm sure Janine sees the same things. You know, we hear the words come out of the CEO's mouth, and the words are, digital transformation is essential. Digital transformation is the way of the future. Great, fantastic. Now, if you scratch the surface of that statement and you go down into the organization, halfway down, there's a middle layer of management who says, do you know what? It's all the same. You know, we've heard this before. What needs to change? So unless you get a senior executive, probably a CEO, or certainly an executive leadership team who are prepared to initiate. I noticed there's a conversation running in the chat, and I think it's a very good conversation, which is, which comes first, the technological aspects of digital transformation or the cultural aspects of digital transformation? And my answer is, and I'll be happy to be contradicted in the chat, but my answer is, whenever I've gone to a board and said, hey guys, I'd like some money to sponsor a cultural transformation project, you know, the executive leadership team look at me and say, do what? Excuse me? And I say, well, you know, it's really important because culture is really important. No, it ain't gonna work. If I go to a board and say, I want to initiate a digital transformation project, they'll at least listen to me. So I think the digital comes first, but then you have to explain to the technologists in the organization that these digital changes and these rapid shifts in business models that they're suggesting means a major organizational shift. Joe, I don't know, would you agree?
What I see is twofold. One is, how do you imagine the possibilities? The technology is moving at such a rapid pace that a CEO or CXO in a particular firm may not know what the possibilities are. So the first side is, what are the possibilities? The second side is, on the business side, there's a business model that is trying to be driven forward to satisfy shareholders or satisfy missions if it's a government. And so the whole idea is, there's not the ideation part of this has to be facilitated. So that's the first part. Secondly, there are a number of companies that are pushing digital transformation and have the infrastructure. When I think of what we think is happening with AWS, or what's happening with Microsoft, or we think of what's going on with Google and others, there's a level of of use cases, models, methods, and tools that are rolling out so fast that the companies who adapt to them are getting the advantages. And that's what I see CEOs and CXOs are hearing. Oh, why is this company over here doing this, this, and this? And why can't I do? Why do I still have a dozen data centers and they only have one, two? Oh, and these concepts in terms of cost. And so the issue is, well, on one side, the IT or the IT has to bring up, here's the possibilities. Here's what can happen. And on the other side, the business has to say, you know what? I see these models. I need these markets. I need these customers. Okay. How do I get to them? And you know what? The data, this is where data starts to become so important. Do I have visualization to my data? I work with one private equity firm that came to me one day and said, you know what? I bought all these companies, all this data is in silos. I have no single view of my customer. I can't move my business model forward to that. That became the first part. That became the digital initiative. How do we get this data so they could visualize customers, so then they could create new business models? And this is where you can't, to me, I think it's hard to say, well, who leads what? There, you have to be able to imagine the possibilities, but you have to see, well, what am I trying to do with customers in the future, or business operations in the future? So and that's why I said this COVID world has now driven all of this to bear. Well, what things were nice to do are now you don't do. Things that we have to do now have to do, and we have to do it with less, or we have to do it with leverage. And that means you have to bring in the ecosystem of partners, building what you're saying, Mike. So.
Yeah. I guess the other thing, and there's some really, really interesting comments coming through on the chat there. Just you know, people should look at and jump in at any time. I think, and one of the questions that's come in as well is, you know, what steps do you recommend in taking in order to kind of generate internal excitement? And it kind of talks a little bit, you know, I kind of respond to that a bit related to what you were saying, Joe. There's leadership, right? And leadership is a key aspect of any organization or any initiative, and especially when you're dealing with something that can be of a paramount change in terms of how people are doing it, why they're doing it, and what's driving it. You know, how important, and I you know, maybe Janine, how important is it to get that excitement within the organization, and what's the role that the C-level staff have within the organization to make that happen?
It's a common vision is crucially important. It's paramount. And, you know, I'm sitting here thinking you can do this in one of two ways. You can either, you know, do it the you know, formal way, where you go through the model and you create excitement by bringing everybody in. There's a further analysis you can do to see what type of people you've got in your organization, and rather than, you know, an IT person or a network person, they get classified in being a visionary or what they call a playmaker, which is someone that brings everybody with them and gets them involved. You get implementers, you get strategists. So they stop being somebody in an IT team or somebody in the billing team, and they become, you know, a visionary or a game changer. And that just gives them a whole new dimension across the organization about what value they can bring and what they can contribute. I think the way, you know, there's got to be certainly a understanding that the company needs to transform, and that certainly should come from the top down, but also to help people grow in that environment as well. Let them see a different part of themselves and how they can add value into the organization. And that flattens the silos. So if you've got a team of experts from different areas, but they know that they each bring a particular value to a team, then they're far more likely to be successful and work into that overall vision than if you're trying to implement it top down and in a waterfall approach. The other thing that I've seen is some people will look at a model or look at the organization and go, wow, this is just too big, it's too much, it's too complex. I saw a comment there earlier, you know, it's really complex. And sometimes it's better to go from the outside in. And some companies ask us to do that. So they look around, they said, we should be doing SD-WAN. And there we go and implement SD-WAN. And that's fine, because what that does is it aligns the organization behind that kind of product, that digital product. So they'll choose a new product because they know this is the new shiny object that everyone wants. But just the implementation of that then aligns the organization, and the excitement builds behind, wow, we've got this new shiny object that we can go and sell.
Yeah, I'm just looking. I've got a kind of questions and answers on one side and comments on the other side of my screen here, and it's like crazy. I was kind of worried when we started this was we were going to run out of questions, but that's obviously not the problem with the level of interest in this, for sure. I think one of the other things that is important is, you know, there was a recent publication by McKinsey which said 70% of digital transformation projects fail, are regarded as failures. Why? You know, like what can we do to reduce that percentages? You know what I mean? Maybe Joe, like what, you know, you see things, you know, whether it's in the financial services, whether it's in the cable industry, the telco industry, cross sectors in North America. And, you know, you and I walk into places and you're listening to the client about the project, and you know it's going to be a train wreck or whatever you want to call it. What could be done to help this situation?
Well, first of all, there's when a project is failing, there's not an understanding of, first of all, I'll say shared accountability from the owner of the initiative all the way through to who has to deliver it. That's one problem. Secondly, is the metrics, understanding of metrics. Well, what is the measurement? What is the measurement of success? The third is the collection of the data so that people are seeing the go, no go steps along the way. You might fail fast, as is used in certain industries, in order to see what something might, if you're able to move out and understand the data better, it might say, okay, we move away from that quickly because it's not going to fulfill the requirements we have. But so I would say the metrics are another key problem. I would say, the other piece of it is sometimes you're not sure of it comes back with the outcomes. Did you really, the outcome you want that was desired, was it really something the business prioritized? And so that's where you get this problem around this 70% of failed projects. I think the other side of it is the ecosystem that's required to deliver a successful initiative has been changing over time, and that's another piece that has to be tracked. I go back to what Mike's comment about partnering and partnerships and alliances. More and more, you need the alliances so that you're able to lower the risk of, increase the probability of a successful project. Is making sure you have the right domain aligned with the technology to make sure you're able to deliver a successful project. So I hope that's a few thoughts there. I have made a living off of people who've had projects that have been in trouble and it had to be turned around. And the first turnaround is alignment with what the business wants to deliver.
But also you see, there's different success factors depending on who you speak with. Right. So you talk to a CFO, you talk to the CMO, you talk to the COO, you talk to, whoever. The differences in terms of their success factors are and quite often when organizations, I found is they do the vision and then that's done. And then it's put on the shelf and left there. And then, a year later you go and say, oh, geez, yeah, we better go back and have a look and how do we measure against the vision statements. So that level of kind of traceability and that, isn't there.
It's almost like what is your nervous system? I mean, this is why the metrics, what is the nervous system? So what's going on with the COO versus what's going on with the CEO versus with CFO? Is there a nervous system that they all agree on? And so that gives you the feedback loop from the strategy to the deliverable of the initiative.
And I can't remember. I read recently that, and maybe somebody can credit the quote to somebody that actually said it first, was that the whole concept of digital transformation, it doesn't end. It's an ongoing process. You don't just suddenly reach this utopian state and you get the badge and you're no. Constantly evolving. If you're stagnant, if you're staying still, you're going to lose, and somebody's going to kick you off your perch. I find it fascinating when I look at organizations, and we recently did some research. There's a really interesting website that MIT have with regards to a whole range of case studies associated with digital transformation. And, one of them was related to Karcher, which is a power hosing, cleaning machines, right? Big power hosers or whatever you call them. But they've now implemented they've now created this idea, it's cleaning as a service, connect data, selling data as you're clean, all of this, connect to the devices. So changing something, and somebody asked the question, and I'll get Janine to talk about it because I know she's recently done some work in this area, is, digital transformation isn't just all about tech companies. It's about bricks and mortar companies as well. It's about, companies who sell tangible products that actually are looking at changing the business models rather than doing it in a traditional way, but in a new way. And maybe Janine, I know you did some work recently in the, let's call it the utility sector. Maybe just give some high level insights on that, on what you can say.
Kevin, thanks. I'll do that. I just want to answer one of the comments that was 2-3 comments ago about digital transformation projects could fail because it's not all about technology. And I've just got to really underpin that and say that's absolutely right. It's not just about the organization. It's not just about the technology and how you transform inside. It's about how you deal with your customers as well. Studies are showing that it's actually about creating an affinity to your brand and creating brand experiences rather than products. Yes, you need the products, but that's almost the underlying level and it's almost a commodity. It's how often can you create an interaction that's a brand experience with your customer? How easily can they draw a report, get stats? How easily can they have their bill? How easily can they get support? How can you interact with them that makes their life easier in a number of dimensions? So you're absolutely right. It's not just about the organization and the transformation within the organization. It's also about how you treat your customers and how your customers perceive you and how you create opportunities to interact with them in a positive way. So having said that, moving on to yes, it's not just high-tech companies that are part of transformation. This applies to pretty much every company. I was involved with a company that made components for many years, and very good components. They had precision engineering machines, and walk through their factory, and it was like a wonderland of these engineering instruments. It was great, but they're being marginalized. These gone are the days of sort of manually turning out these components. It's all automated now, and they were losing money and being undercut by a competitor very, very quickly. So they understood that they needed to get out of this production mindset and into a services mindset. So it was to take their thinking from, well, this is what it takes to produce a service. You have to onboard customers. They have to sign a contract. Then you need to know what their services are. When they call in and say that my service isn't working, it was an IoT service. And you need a view of that customer, and the concepts like there's a process, right? There's an end-to-end process behind a service delivery life cycle. And guess what? That process needs to be automated. Otherwise, you're going to have a room full of people that you're paying for a very slow and bad customer experience at a huge cost, and your service is never going to work. So there's a huge drive and a lot of work to be done around educating non-tech firms about changing from just producing commodities, especially where they're wanting to get into the as-a-service market.
No, yeah, go ahead, Joe. Sorry, yeah.
Weigh in a little bit. I think what happens is when you have these, the brick and mortar businesses, people are seeing the opportunities that if I can disrupt an industry, okay, there are going to be new markets made, new things happening. This is driving the innovation cycle in Silicon Valley and beyond. How can I disrupt these industries that are going to move? Okay, I'm going to move slow, and I'm not going to move fast, and I'm going to stay in my model as long as I can. It is getting those industries to understand you must control your data. You got to understand your visualization of your data operationally, customer, financial, et cetera, as it all intersects, because that's the new speed. It doesn't matter what industry it is. It's the new speed. And this is that's why I always see when one talks about digital transformation, what are you doing with, how do you visualize your data? Because that is the key linkage between the CXO level and IT. Can I make you see it better? Can I make you see it faster? Can I make you change because you see it? Okay. And because of that, somebody else is going to see it and going to say, you know what, I can pluck that industry out. And I'll tell you one, I advise a early stage company that's disrupting the cell tower industry. Who would have thought? You got to have towers, got to have new radios, technology's going to sit there. So what happens is something that was done the same way from the inception of the cell tower industry can be disrupted through the right kind of data, right kind of information. New market is established and can be invested in. This is the things that we're seeing today that'll move more and more rapidly across, I'll say, business models that have stayed and have been tried and true forever. People are saying, well, how do I disrupt that? How do I get in? How do I make a new business model that's going to be the next disruptor? Okay, where I was riding in a car with my mother, who worked at Sears. I don't know, in the US, there's a place called Sears and Roebuck. Okay. And I told Mom, that was the Amazon of the 1950s, was Sears. Okay. Now Sears is gone. Nobody knows what it is. Okay. Disrupted. Why? They didn't change. They didn't control their information. They didn't see the future. So.
Yeah, to me, that the classic is the Blockbuster and Netflix, right? So how come Blockbuster did not become Netflix? It should have done. It had everything going for it at the time, and it just failed, miserably, and didn't be, But just kind of going through some of the topics here as well is. There's a couple of questions in around organizational transformation versus digital transformation versus digitization. How do you see the difference between, or what does that mean? Like, putting a website, taking a product and making somebody being able to buy it online isn't necessarily digital transformation, right? So I don't know, did somebody want to kind of talk about digitization versus digital transformation?
That is digitization. So where you're taking a product or a service and it's now online, you've now digitized that product. Digital transformation involves, from everything I've read and seen, a different way of doing things. It involves a lot of automation, but it also is a shift in mindset and a shift in the way that the organization operates from end to end. So it is about being more efficient, being more streamlined. And the best example, we've just, we're still going through it, right? We're working from home. That has been a profound transformation. Collaboration, bringing in partners for a particular project, and downsizing companies. The days of huge monolithic companies are over. It's more about how can people partner and come together and then move on to the next thing. Transformation in the way that we even employ our staff. So the job for life, very few companies are going to have that. It's the way of the future is that people are going to bring their own value and especially those with skills that are most needed for digital transformation, like our software engineering guys, coders. They will work how they want to, when they want to, at a price that suits them, and then they're going to move on to the next organization. So it's really about transforming the whole way that a company operates, and being flexible and agile and taking advantage of the opportunities that is presented at any point in time, and then moving on to the next thing, that's in line with their strategy. So it's a lot more, is a lot less rigid and a lot more responsive. The companies have to move into that dimension.
I think,
yeah,
Kevin,
yeah, sorry, go ahead, Mike. Yeah. Yeah,
So
sure.
I'm curious as to which comes first, chicken or egg. Okay, meaning I understand. I've heard what Janine said, and I agree with it. I think that's absolutely fantastic. So there is a goal for many organizations to become, let's say, more agile, and digital transformation allows them to become more agile, and for the reasons that Janine described, the ability to enter new markets, the ability to launch new products more quickly, etc., 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 etc. But I'm kind of thinking about whether digital transformation is the goal, or whether digital transformation is the environment or the tool that you use to achieve your goal. So maybe your goal is selling more stuff more quickly to more customers. Or as Joe said earlier, very practical things like, transforming 6 data centers down to 2 and saving yourself 50, 60, 70 million dollars in cost. So is digital transformation the goal? Is that what we're trying to achieve? Or are we actually trying to achieve some kind of competitive advantage which will be enabled by digital transformation? Because I think if you're not clear on that, then you run the risk of, in England, we would say the tail wagging the dog. You've got to be sure which aspect is important and which aspect is the enabler. What do you think, guys?
I fully agree with you, Mike. I think it's not, as I said earlier, I don't believe digital transformation is the utopian site that you reach or you get to. It's I don't want to say quite a frame of mind, but it's a way of doing things. And it's not just about, making your products and service digitized or, whatever. It's actually part of the way of working and part of the organization. It's the ethos. It's the way people think.
Joe?
And it's, yeah, Joe?
I think very much so that it is the enabler. I see the end result is always for the business is the business. You use these things to enable it and get the advantages so that to compete and then that's why I'm very, when I see it it's very much, well, how do you take how does this initiative, when somebody says you have a digital transformation initiative, it's actually you have a business initiative that's going to be enabled by digital transformation. So, and that's the way you have to view it, because that's the buy-in. That's why when the money comes to fund the initiative, if it's seen in the light of the business, then the goal becomes clear.
And with that frame of thinking, you're identifying new opportunities. You're looking at new ecosystems to participate. You have better business capabilities to be able to do things that you previously weren't able to do. That's the state of transformation of the organization that's empowered by digital. It's not, okay, hey, we've reached the end of the project. Let's open the champagne and off we go. It's not, right? Yeah. And the other thing, it isn't going to solve every problem either. Guess what? You're going to have a crap load of other problems you hadn't even thought about as a result of it. But you'll survive. You're competitive. You're looking at new revenue streams. You're identifying new customers. And you're looking at it, I think, as Janine was saying quite often, you're looking at it from the customer's perspective, from the outside in, rather than, historically it tended to be the other way. Janine, and I'm just conscious of the time, unbelievably, we've only got about 5 minutes left. Janine, your thoughts?
Absolutely. It's not an end state. It's a journey, and it's a way of doing things. It's a change of mindset, and I think underpinning all of that, it gives people a lot more freedom to be creative. Move away from this old sort of strict hierarchy and in a lot of companies, this culture of fear. Now, if I make a mistake, I'm fired, I'm out. We've got to get to a stage where people, are allowed to make mistakes, fail quickly, do agile projects, and technology allows us to do that, right? So put the right things in place, empower people, allow them to be creative, allow them to fail and learn and recreate and improve. And if you look at agile, it's about continuous improvement. It's about having a minimal viable product. It's not perfect. It's a instance or a version of a product, and then using your intelligence, using technology like AI or machine learning, whatever, to gather information and create with that and continuously make improvements. But you need the people to come along with you in that mindset. Give them the empowerment and the freedom to create, and rather than putting them in silos, that you're from this department, you're from that department, allow them to understand their own unique value in being, a game changer or a visionary or implementer, and get them in teams and give them a common goal and let them work together across those silos to create and come up with new ideas. So definitely.
So Janine, would you say that digital transformation for organizations isn't so much a technical program or project? It's rather more a mindset, something akin to what Joe was saying earlier, that recognizing the value of data, recognizing the power that data gives to your organizations, and thinking in a different way about how you can run your internal and external processes driven by this digital mindset. Is that what digital transformation means?
I would say that's a good percentage of it, yes, absolutely.
Wow.
It is a completely different way of thinking, right? It's a much more mature way of thinking, to a point where people are almost self-governing and are professionals on their own right, and are creating and contributing value into the organization because they have the freedom to do so.
But your last point is really important there, Janine, the freedom to do so, because that's where strong leadership within an organization plays a pivotal role, that enable, as we say, people to fail in that. Now, guess what? As you're transforming, you still have to business to run. You still need to do things. So you're changing the wheels as the car moves along. But it is it has to be, that leadership is key in my mind, because if you don't get that mindset and somebody having that vision and somebody saying, look, then then things won't happen. I'm just going to let everybody finish up, because we just take the last kind of 30 seconds each to get some final closing words. The other thing, just for anybody before people start jumping off, is we are having another webinar on Tuesday, and it's going to be kind of more or less the same. So please, this has been a fascinating, I found it a very interesting discussion, and the questions that have come in have been brilliant and really helped steer this conversation. So I'm going to shut up. Joe, over to you.
Sure. So hey everybody, it's been great to be and participate and fun as well. So I always think about the things from a strategic point of view, and want to always think about how do you get that buy-in for a digital transformation strategy. It has to have the leadership from the top, and that buy-in. So just keep that in mind, and I look forward to participating next week as well.
Mike?
Yeah, thank you, Kevin. I likewise, I found this discussion really entertaining and educating, because before this, I'd always considered digital transformation as somehow technology driven. But the more we talk about it and the more we discuss and exchange ideas, the more I'm beginning to realize that it's not so much a technology project or a technology activity. It's almost a state of mind. It's almost like a culture. And my mind, coming from where I come from, which is a research company, turns to how can you assess the level of digital maturity of your organization? Are you ready as an organization to make this digital journey? Is there some way of capturing some criteria which gives you some indication of what the immediate next steps would be? I think that would be really, really useful for people.
Great. And last but not least, Janine.
Thanks, Kevin. And Mike, absolutely, there is a way to capture that, and it's going through that people and culture dimension, and having the conversations with the people in the organization, and getting buy-in and consensus. So yeah, there are ways of capturing that, but it's a profound change, and people don't always want to change. So some of them, feel quite safe in their little bubbles, but when they understand the vision and that they'll be valued in a totally different way, makes that journey a lot easier. But I must say, this has been really great. I've loved participating. I've loved the questions, and it's just been really good to hear the views from Joe and from Mike. It's really been a good experience. So thank you very much.
Thanks.
Oh, thanks all. And I guess, finally, just, one of the things that we'll want to do is we'll provide details in an email to people on how you can get further details about Janine and GTX, and also about, let me get rid of these questions out of the way, from Joe in a BusinessOne, and also from obviously Mike in Alliance Best Practices. And as a last point, I really would like to thank everyone for participating, my panelists for agreeing to this. I think this has turned out, completely different than we thought, but actually a lot better. It's a lot interesting. The discussion went places we didn't necessarily think they would. We will send through a recording of the video to everybody who's registered. And also, thank you very much to we had 40 plus people on for the full duration, which is excellent. And hopefully we'll see more of you on Tuesday. And thank you. And any questions, we will also, any kind of open questions, we'll try and get answers to people as well. But again, thank you all. Really enjoyed it. Thanks, Mike, Joe, Janine. Take care, everybody.
Thanks, guys.
Bye.
Cheers, Kevin. Thank you.